Major General Lang is new to me, but what I know about you from reputation is that you are really one of the models for how to be a citizen soldier. And it is great to have you in our midst today. Recently promoted to Major General, is that correct? And serving a couple of tours in Iraq and in Bosnia, if I have that correct, and served for over 40 years in the military. With your applause, would you please welcome him? And the time is yours. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Colonel Kriesel, ladies and gentlemen, friends, veterans, how you guys doing? All right. Wow, this is incredible. Thank you so much for joining us on this Veterans Day. It's certainly an honor to be chosen to speak today on behalf of our service members, past and present, on a day where we reflect and pause and honor our veterans that have served our country in the uniforms of the armed forces. These were people who came from all walks of life, from this great land of ours, from every single corner. They were our fathers and our mothers, our sisters and our brothers, our friends and our neighbors. They were ordinary people, living ordinary lives, who were asked to make extraordinary sacrifices in extraordinary times for their country. Now, there's a common thread that runs through our veterans of today and their motivation to serve. They answer the call to duty just like the veterans before them, just like many of you here have as well, because they believe in that old adage that freedom isn't free. And the freedoms that we take for granted are sometimes worth fighting for. And generations of citizens have worn the uniform of the United States service members and fought both on domestic and foreign soil, defending the freedom for us, achieving freedom for some, and securing freedom for many. So I'd like to remember them with you today, but I'd also like to discuss with you a few things kind of near and dear to my heart. Talk a little bit about our current Army, our soldiers, what they're doing, how great they are, and maybe even present a challenge to some of you. Some of America's best and brightest served on the blood-soaked beaches of Normandy, the jungles of the South Pacific, over the skies in Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. They fought in the deadly skies near Korea's Yalu River or Vietnam's Red River Valley. And more recently, they fought and died in the mountains and caves of Afghanistan or the dusty streets and highways of Iraq. Only those that have seen the horrors of war firsthand can really truly know what these soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines have gone through. Perhaps they were charging out of that landing craft on Omaha Beach with no place to hide, no chance for retreat. Or maybe they were in a burning aircraft, plunging to the earth, trying desperately to escape that fiery death. They may have been in a convoy, racing through the dusty streets of Baghdad when a roadside bomb ripped through their vehicle. Each of them knew what their duty was, but surely all of them dreamed of going home to their families and the life that they cherished. But yet, these veterans that we honor today on Veterans Day answered the call to arms. And not because they love war, let's be clear about that, but for a higher purpose, because they love liberty and justice and equality and the right to live in a land free from tyranny. Today on Veterans Day, we remember the sacrifices that these Americans have made worldwide in answering the call to freedom. These fine Americans are a symbol of the services and how they have ensured freedom abroad as well as right here at home in Stillwater. Now, there's another group of veterans, though, that we sometimes fail to mention. We've mentioned some of them just a little bit earlier with the pastor, but I want to recognize them as well. Whenever troops are called to action and deployed in support of a mission, they leave behind their spouses, their children, their parents, all their loved ones. Family members may not carry a rucksack on their back, but they carry that burden, that cumbersome burden of worrying about their service member, their soldier. Probably the most cumbersome burden anyone can imagine. And they carry that burden until their loved ones return. I personally understand the importance of a strong family, having been deployed or overseas 8 times in the last 8 years alone, sometimes for a month or two at a time and a couple for a year at a time. Many times your family is the source of your greatest strength. So if your family members here today, I want to thank you for that. And I would like to ask, if you are a family member of a veteran, of a deployed soldier, either past or present, would you please stand and be recognized? There you go. That's what I'm talking about. These are veterans too, ladies and gentlemen. They may not have been drafted, but they're veterans just as much as the veterans we honor today. Today, more than ever in recent history, we need to recognize and remember the sacrifices of our men and women in the armed forces. Nothing illustrates our nation's commitment more than putting boots on the ground where they are needed, and our youngest generation of soldiers have answered that call. Our Army today remains a preeminent land power in the entire world, and will remain so primarily because of the courageous men and women who proudly wear a uniform of American soldiers, just like these soldiers right in front of me right here. In a recent speech celebrating the birthday of the United States Army, Secretary of Defense said of our soldiers in the Army, they have not served us just as soldiers, but as diplomats, and not just as war fighters, but as peacekeepers. And with every new challenge, they have demonstrated the ability to rise to the occasion and succeed. You know, these soldiers represent the finest Americans that I know. And I believe that they will be called the greatest generation 40 or 50 years from now. And I'm honored to be able to serve alongside them. And there's a long-told story that somewhere in the middle of World War II, Chief of Staff of the Army General George C. Marshall was asked, does America have a secret weapon with which to win this war? And he replied, we did have such a weapon. And it's not the weapon you're probably thinking about right now that helped win World War II. He said that that secret weapon was the best darn kids in the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you that we still have that secret weapon today. The best darn kids in the world still wear this nation's uniform. Our young men and women today continue to volunteer, continue to step forward, raise their right hand and say, send me, knowing full well when they sign on that line that they'll probably be going to Iraq or Afghanistan. But yet they continue to come forward and put their lives at risk to defend the freedoms that we hold so dear. Now, I really appreciate the fact that the Trinity Church today is honoring Minnesota's involvement in the Civil War and World War II, because our Army and National Guard of Minnesota, a lot of the history dates back with these units to those conflicts. The first Army in the United States that was offered to President Lincoln so that he could secure the freedom of the slaves in the Civil War came right from the 1st Minnesota Regiment. And this regiment, whom many historians will tell you, saved the Battle of Gettysburg on July 2nd by plugging a hole and charging the Confederate lines. But their losses were heavy. They sustained a Civil War high of 82% casualties. And units today in the 1st Brigade Combat Team from Mankato and Rochester still use "To the Last Man" as their motto in remembrance of these heroes from Gettysburg. And units from our 1st Brigade Combat Team also trace their lineage to the battle for the Philippines during World War II and the Bataan Death March, where they sustained over 30% casualties from that torturous march alone. And even today, the unit from Brainerd, when the commander or the first sergeant calls out to their soldiers, attention, they call out, "Remember Bataan," which the soldiers will echo, "Never forget." And many of the elements of the Minnesota National Guard were part of the 34th Infantry Red Bull Division, the first U.S. soldiers to step foot on European soil during World War II. And they fired the very first round of any American forces in World War II. The 34th Infantry Division ended the war credited with being engaged with the enemy longer than any other United States military unit, and served in combat longer than any other U.S. military unit. These are the elements that make up the Minnesota National Guard. They have a long history of answering the call to achieve and secure freedom for many. And even today, as we speak, over 3,000 of our Minnesota Guard soldiers are deployed forward, continuing that proud legacy. So obviously, Veterans Day is a day to remember, but it also is a time to reflect on the gratitude that we feel for our young men and women serving in the military today. So I'm asking you today to be generous in expressing your appreciation next time you meet a soldier. I think we do things right with our veterans today, particularly in Minnesota. But it was a lesson that we learned from our previous veterans, and in many cases in Minnesota, implemented by our veterans. And more often than not, it's our Korean veterans and our Vietnam veterans who are in the front rows holding the flags and cheering us on at our deployment ceremonies and our welcome home ceremonies. I want to thank those veterans for that. So I guess I'm really asking you to continue that support and even spread the word. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir today, not just this choir, but this choir, because I know most of you do support our veterans. You wouldn't be here today if you didn't. So I guess I'm asking you just to continue that support. You see, medals and awards are given to some. Nearly 1,000 Bronze Stars to our Minnesota Guard soldiers alone the past few years, and over 300 Purple Hearts for being wounded in combat. But I want to tell you something. A simple, heartfelt thank you from you all means more to them than any medal that I can pin on their chest. And that thank you means more to them than you can imagine. You see, we cannot forget the resounding absence of support, the absence of thanks that our Vietnam veterans received decades ago. We cannot let the same fate befall our veterans of today that fell on our veterans of the 60s and 70s. We are the right people, and now is the right time to give these veterans the thanks that they deserve, and to ensure that the veterans programs that are in place today are prepared to meet the needs of our newest veterans. And these returning heroes include a new kind of combat veteran, female combat veterans. Unlike any war before this, women have become true combatants and veterans of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. I'm talking about female soldiers like Sergeant Leanne Hester, an MP. We have MPs right here today. An MP from a National Guard unit in Kentucky. Sergeant Hester was awarded the prestigious Silver Star for her actions during an enemy ambush on a convoy that she was escorting in Iraq. The Silver Star is the third highest decoration awarded below the Medal of Honor. Upon being attacked, Sergeant Hester positioned her vehicle in the line of fire from the enemy, thereby so that her convoy could get through that kill zone safely. And once that convoy cleared the kill zone, she took her squad and she flanked that enemy. She's cutting off their escape route, and she left 2 of our soldiers there to cover that escape route. And she led the rest of her squad back through the kill zone, assaulted a trench line with grenade launchers and small arms, and during that close order battle, Sergeant Hester personally killed 3 of the Islamic insurgents. Receiving a Silver Star is pretty significant. She was the first female soldier to receive a Silver Star since World War II. Did she dwell on it? Here are her comments. Being a female had nothing to do with it. I was mad it's all about your duties and your fellow soldiers, and I was mad the first 5 seconds. Then your training kicks in and your soldiering kicks in. I had a job to do. I just did my job. Whoa, Sergeant Hester. You blocked the line of fire from the enemy, thereby saving the lives of your fellow soldiers. You attacked the trench, you assaulted a trench line of the enemy. You conducted a flanking movement on the enemy, and you personally killed 3 of them. And you were just doing your job? We have a similar hero right here in Minnesota. One of our Red Bull soldiers received state and national attention in 2007 for his heroism. Staff Sergeant, now Lieutenant Chad Molenberg, was awarded the Silver Star for his bravery while serving in combat with our very own 1st Brigade combat team. He was in a firefight that lasted over an hour. This young NCO defended his convoy, again stopped by an IED, against a superior force, killing all the attacking insurgents without one single casualty to his own unit. He was the first Red Bull soldier to receive a Silver Star since World War II. But once again, Lieutenant Malmberg's comments were to thank his comrades, because to him, he was just doing his job. But that's what our soldiers do over there. Your soldiers do over there. Do their job. And just doing their job, they're fighting an asymmetric war where there are no front lines, there are no rear lines. You're behind the enemy lines the moment you leave your operating base. And the battle is just around the corner, and driving by in a van or hiding in someone's cellar. The enemy in Iraq and Afghanistan is often an insurgent who, much like the enemies in Vietnam, neither wears a uniform nor fights for freedom. Instead, that enemy seeks the destruction of one's way of life, their peace of mind, and their personal security. But in the course of just doing their job, your soldiers, your young heroes, are making life and death level decisions each and every day. Now, you have every reason to feel good about today's soldiers. First of all, they're extremely smart, extremely bright, a lot smarter than I was when I joined 40 years ago, I can tell you that right now. But they come into the service so much smarter, too. Over 98% of the soldiers today are high school graduates, the highest in the history of the United States Army. And their ability to learn their job is just so incredible. Here's an interesting statistic. Over 60% of our recruits that join the Army today have never fired a weapon. Now, for us 50 and 60-year-olds, that's kind of hard for some of us to believe if we brought our 22s and our shotguns and our deer rifles to high school with us. But that's a fact. But yet, our junior officers and our NCOs of the Army turn these recruits into a fighting force that the United States has never seen. Soldiers like Sergeant Hester, who run to the sound of gunfire rather than away from it. I saw it myself dozens of times. They're physically fit. They're drug-free. They're well-trained, technically, tactically proficient, willing to immediately step up and take charge if need be. And they maintain a standard as never before. I couldn't be prouder of these kids right here, and all of our soldiers, and I hope you guys are too. One of the groups I'm most proud of, though, are our wounded warriors. Over 32,000 from Iraq, over 13,000 from Afghanistan. So when we travel to D.C. in various locations, we always try to stop and visit them, regardless of whether it's the amputee ward at Walter Reed, or the burn unit at Brooke Army Medical Center, or even the traumatic brain injury unit right here at the Minneapolis VA. If you're ever depressed or feeling sorry for yourself, visit one of these heroes. The courage that they have and the character that they display, if you visit one, I guarantee you it'll be a life-changing encounter. We visit them thinking that we're going to give them some encouragement, and we leave there encouraged. We go there to help them with their recovery and inspire them, and we leave there inspired. They don't have any legs, ladies and gentlemen. Well, they're lost both their arms, blown off by an IED, or they're burned beyond facial recognition from an IED or a rocket-propelled grenade hitting the fuel tank on their vehicle. And yet, they're the ones that are feeling guilty. Guilty because their comrades, their battle buddies, are still in the fight, and they're not there with them, fighting alongside them, covering them. And they want to get back there. They want to get back over there, back in the fight, back with their comrades, back with their unit. You can't believe the spirit that these soldiers have. And you walk away from these units after visiting them and you think, my God, where do these people come from? And how fortunate are we as a nation to have raised up such heroes. And I walk away from them myself, questioning myself, am I even worthy as an officer, as a general officer, to lead such individuals? And then you hope and pray that somewhere during your career, you've mentored or inspired or provided some leadership to help make these soldiers who they are today. So just as a generation of American soldiers helped win the Second World War, so too will today's generation, the grandsons and the granddaughters of this greatest generation, help win this global war on terror. You know, we might call them the Nintendo generation, but they prove themselves just as strong and determined as any other generation of veterans and peacekeepers around this world. Now, you know something? You know, for years, we've listened to the stories of the World War II veterans and Korea veterans and the Vietnam veterans, and as well we should, because it's a story that we need to hear and a story that needs to be told. But I'd like to turn the tables just a little bit this afternoon. Today, I'm asking you veterans of all those years to take some time and listen to the stories of our newest generation of soldiers. Invite them to the Legion, the VFW, to the Trinity Church. Engage them because they too have a story to tell. And it's one that will make you just as proud about the heritage of our armed forces as any veterans in the past. Have I told you yet today that we've got some great soldiers in our military? Am I getting this message across to you this afternoon? And they are your soldiers, by the way. You know, they're not mine. Many of them may work for me because of my rank, but they serve you and the American people. And I can tell you another thing about your soldiers, your heroes, your service members. They will never, ever apologize for being an American. Yeah, America's not perfect. We all know that. But I can think of no better place on earth. But we didn't become great by accident. We earned it. And while we were earning it, we kept and we continue to keep a large part of the world free. You veterans here today know that better than anyone. We remain the beacon of hope for many, as there are more people trying to come to our shores, to our country, than anywhere on earth. And God willing, that will always be so. But we're number one in that regard. Don't ever apologize for it. Just be darn proud of it. And thank the veterans and our service members for making that so. Okay, time to wrap things up. But as you can see, I maybe get a little excited talking about your soldiers. And as you probably noticed, I sometimes get a lump in my throat when I talk about these heroes, and I make no excuses for that. That said, though, it's certainly an honor to see so many of you here today taking the time on your Sunday afternoon to show your patriotism, show your support for our veterans who have sacrificed so much for our country. Now, a few years ago, Tony Blair, former Prime Minister of England, was sometimes criticized for his unwavering support for the United States. He was asked by a reporter one day, "Why do you believe so much in America?" Prime Minister Blair replied to that reporter, and his reply was so fitting as we gather here today to recognize Veterans Day. He replied to that reporter, "Only two defining forces have ever offered to die for you: Jesus Christ and the American GI. One died for our soul, and the other died for our freedom." So speaking on behalf of those still wearing the uniform today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to stand in the ranks with them, and it's certainly my honor to be in your presence this afternoon. I want to thank you once again for being here today, and I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't ask you to please think about our deployed soldiers and their families. Please keep them in your hearts and your prayers, and wish them well in hopes that they will return home to their families. So may God bless our veterans, may God bless our heroes, and may God continue to United States of America. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Perfect.